I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
Hey guys, it's Charlie here from Confessions of a Business Owner, and today I am back with my co-host, Kim Barrett. How you doing, Kim?
Doing very well, Mr. Charlie, sir. How you doing?
Well, I must say I've missed you a bit. It's been a few weeks since we've recorded an episode. I've been doing some travel, and then you've been out and about yourself, and a lot of life events coming through this time of year.
It is. This is the season to almost be jolly. We're getting onto the latter half of the year as well, but we've had a few exciting weeks, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, I mean, I'm just going to drop it straight away. Is something very important. I'm going to say the most important events of this year is that both you and I have turned 30, or I'm about to turn 30 at the point of returning this. And this is, I mean, I'll ask you straight off the bat, is like, I have never reflected so much in my life like I have coming up to 30. Like, this is milestone moments for me.
Well, I'm a few weeks ahead, so I'll give you the heads up because I actually compressed a disc in my back about a week after turning 30. So just kind of like take it easy. Don't go and play a game of squash thinking that you're in your 20s and you can just, whack things around because you'll be hobbling for 2.5 weeks. Never have I ever wished that my body could operate properly as when I did that. I tell you what, it was painful.
You've got to appreciate the irony in that comment though. Because like we've joked about this previously and like, it's all over once you're 30. And like, even now, it's like I had one glass of wine at dinner last night and I was a bit rough this morning. And I was like, oh, wow, body isn't what it used to be.
It gets worse, man. It gets worse. Trust me. You need a walk. You need a walking frame by the time you hit it.
Well, it's what's been really interesting about this, and this is what we're going to talk about on today's episodes, is both of us started pretty early on in our 20s. And I think we've both learnt a lot, and there's been some amazing stories and some highs and lows. And especially in this time, I've been writing down, what those experiences have been. So what we're going to be doing in today's episode is actually, sharing the biggest lessons from our 20s. I'm really excited about this because I had a lot of giggles, and me and my partner even have laughed a lot about some of the things we look back on now. And I'm hoping someone can learn from some of these interesting situations nonetheless.
Yes, definitely. There's so much, and it's like, as you said, it's like a period of reflection. Even though, to be honest, like I joke, but there's not really that much difference between 28 and 30, right? Or 25 and 30, to be honest. But it's like when you hit that point, it's like, you do kind of look back over the years and take note of a few of the lessons, that's for sure.
Well, I don't know about you, but I can certainly sit here and say I've gotten smarter because some of these things I'm about to talk about definitely learned some stuff, but I tend to agree. I don't feel any different from there. But why don't we kick it over to you and start with one of the stories or one of the first things you would like to share from your 20s?
Yeah, and probably one of the bigger ones, and it's been reiterating itself for a little while leading up, is about actually strategically choosing, and we talked about this just before, what we do and don't do. Because in my 20s, like especially early on, it's like everything that I had an opportunity to do was a yes. It's like, hey Kim, we have this. Yes, cool. I'm going to do that. Hey Kim, I'm a new client. I don't fit your client criteria, but I will give you money. Yes, give me the money. Like everything was just like yes, 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 yes. And now it's like it's so good to be able to sit back and when something comes across my desk, I'm like, okay, is it something we need to do right now? Is it even in the category of what we're looking at? If not, no, that's cool. And saying no so much more often because, I think even probably the last 2 years, there's still been a few times where I've said yes and it should have been a no. And now, especially, when I've nearly broke my back, I'm sitting back in my chair with my with my back brace on. I'm very much more specific in what we're choosing to say yes and no to.
I love that. And you can see my cheeks already hurting a little bit because that was definitely me as well. And we've even spoken about this is I think that we spend more time saying no to things than we do yes to things now. But I want to ask this question. When you've said yes to something and it should have been a no, you knew better, don't you find it always bites you really good and proper now?
Oh, yeah, big time. And as well, and straight after you're like, whoa, I shouldn't have probably agreed to that. And then the next point, you're like, oh, damn, straight away. Like, to give an example, I'll say, depends when this comes out. No names or dates. There was an event somewhere in the last 25 years of my life, right, where I was invited to go there, and at the time I was like, I shouldn't be going to this event, but I was like, I'll go there and speak because, if I go there and impact a handful of people, there's going to be like, under 100 business owners. It should be good. So that's what I was told was there. And a few things started happening, like venue changes, date changes, speaker changes, and I'm like, okay, they're hitting a few snags. That's all good. I go to rock up, and this happened to me a few times where I went to rock up, like, cool, I'm going to do this, and there was no one there. Like, not like there was like 5 people there. There was like...
Not 100 you thought there would be?
No, not even the potentially. I was like, as I said, if there's 5 people, I'll still rock it. They'll get a great experience. One of them will probably want to do something with me, which would be cool. 0. So then afterwards I was like, yes, I definitely should have said no instead of just saying yes it is.
Well, on the surface, I can understand why you would want to say yes to an opportunity like that, but they are the red flags. Venue moves, date changes, it means they're not selling tickets, they're downsizing. But again, you won't know that when you're first starting out. So that's something you pick up with experience. But nonetheless, I really like that topic of saying no to more things. That's definitely a lesson from our 20s. Mine and yours, or take it on both.
Yeah. And then what about yourself? So give me, I'm sure you said you've got a couple of belly laughers. Let's hear some of the lessons.
All right, you ready? I got a cracker here. This is one of my favorite. I'm already giggling a little bit. Me and Bianca laughed about this when we thought about it. So my first business, I was actually selling things on eBay. That's what I did at first. And what I would do is something called arbitrage. So at the time, the rules on eBay were that you had to live in the country you sold from. So like in Australia, at that point, if you wanted to sell things on Australian eBay, you had to be in Australia. So what I used to do is I used to look on overseas sites using a VPN and then offer to buy products in bulk from the States or some other country. Then I would bring them to Australia and sell them on eBay. That was my model. Now, what I did is I found some products that were actually in the hair loss niche, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like I found something where there was a margin. It looked really good, and I'm like, we're going to buy a ton of this stuff and bring it in. And this was like my first big win, if you will. Like this is the first time I'm like, yes, I'm finally making some money as an entrepreneur. And I put down a credit card, I bought a heap of stuff, and then we brought it to the country. And then 2 things happened that I didn't understand. Are you ready for this? This is where it gets funny. So the first thing is I got a letter from the Australian import thing saying that you have to pay GST. And I'm like, well, I didn't account for GST in my numbers. But it's like, it's okay. I've only lost 10%. That's cool. I'll pay my 10%. And then they said this word. And I was like, what's this tariff thing? What's a tariff? And in the tariff itself with this particular product line in the country I was buying from, Australia wasn't on good terms with trade here. So the tariff eradicated all my margin, and I actually had to sell this entire shipment of goods at a loss. So, it's like it really hurt. And at that point in time, like I can't remember how much I exactly spent. It might have been like, $3,000 or $4,000 on goods. But to me, in my world at that time, like that was a lot of money. That was like so much money. And I'll never forget how much of a failure I felt like at that point. Like I really, really was like at a very low point when that all happened. And the big lesson I got out of that is the importance of knowing your numbers. Like you have to know your numbers and well thought out your numbers before you do things like that. And the impression it had on me, well, Kim, you would understand. I reckon I probably take my numbers more seriously than anyone else you know. And I don't think that would have happened without that horrendous time.
I was actually thinking like to quickly interject another story that in a past life, I was in the world of tropical fish, ornamental fish breeding and stuff like that. We import stuff, and routinely people, when they would send me stuff, would have soil from the fish tanks in there and all that sort of stuff. So trying to send soil to Australia means that your whole shipment gets eradicated on site. So at least your stuff came in. I didn't even get some stuff sometimes. And it's like, and then I wasn't calculating my numbers easy. I was just like, I saw dollar signs. Like, yeah, cool, bring all this stuff. Took me a little bit longer to work on my numbers than Charley, but I had probably a few bad lessons to get me through that. But
Some nice
so
little
true.
giggle points, some nice little laugh. Look, it's funny because, like, often people, when I speak to them in business, it's and I'm sure you have this as well. It's like they think we were born here. They think we woke up and our businesses were at this level. And I try to tell people, it's like, no. We had to earn our way through this stuff. It's like, I went through all the things you're going through. And even now, it's like, I find it rather funny that we've both managed to get in trouble importing either soil or hair products. But I mean, as part of the journey, these are the things we learn. All right, so we'll kick it back over to you, Kim. Share another insightful lesson from your 20s or something that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, this one will probably be a more regular, recurring one that we've shared on this podcast. And so, like, the big lesson is finding like the right people to give you the right advice, because so often that happens. And look, and I think because people learn so differently, so then this is a lesson that even came recently. It's like, even though I have great people around me in the terms of like accounting, numbers, etc., like only recently I learned to, I read a book from, or listened to a book from a guy called Mike Michalowicz, which is Profit First. Great book. And it's like completely changed the way, like it's still a lesson. Like technically it probably should fall into my 30s, but I'm going to share it anyway. I'm going to give you the bad backstories where now, like the way that I'm structuring things and the way that I'm allocating money out and the way that I'm like hiding accounts so I don't even know that they exist and they're not even in my cash flow and stuff like that, has already in a handful of weeks, like into a couple, about a month and a half, made a huge difference, and it even makes me feel better about it. But previously, by getting, I'll say, bad advice, because when I first started doing things, like obviously I'm in the online marketing field, anyone that said they were good at something, I was like, okay, you just told me you're good at Facebook ads, you just told me you're good at this, credit card 9747, 197, 4497, whatever it is. Just like rack up all this debt to learn all this stuff, which is definitely paid off now. But at the time, it's like I was paying for information from the wrong people that I shouldn't have been learning from at the time, for my own personal learning style, for the way that I operate things. And so often, I remember one time, it was the first time I ever properly went through like a one-click upsell funnel. It was this old like MLME type, internet marketing type business. And I went through and it was like 97. And then it was like 197. I was like, yep, cool. And then it was like 997. I was like, yeah, cool. And then it was like 4997. I think my credit card, I must have just stupidly got a 10K credit card. It's like I was like, yeah. And then it's like, and now you need traffic. Here's a traffic package for $3,000. I'm like, cool. Pretty much just spent $8,000, but they told me, of course it's going to make money. Like they're going to send traffic to the things that I just bought. Like I bought it all. Surely everyone else is too. Did not happen that way.
I love that story. I think that is such an interesting story and great book, by the way, Profit First. I think a lot of business owners in general need to get a bit more sorted with how they do their finances. And a lot of people working hard that aren't being rewarded from it through poor understanding of finances. So it's a really deep topic. So I'm thrilled to hear you've taken that on board, Kim, but I want to almost latch into that because I believe it's so true. You are one of the people in my life that I know that I see how heavily you invest in your own education, and I almost try to keep up. So every time I see you do it, I try and do it, and it's a really good thing to rub off on other people. But one of the things I found fascinating, and I want to know if you find this true, you can have a book like this one, and it can be the best advice in the world for you and really, really help you. But then someone else will read it, and it wasn't the right advice for them at all. Either their learning style, wrong time, wrong industry. But I've, particularly seen with mentors, and I'm going to tell a story in a minute, is like I've met people that have had a phenomenal success rate with a mentor or a coach and then seen them have astronomical failures with that same mentor and coach, like different people, different mentor and coach. And it just goes to show like there's just so many variables.
Yeah, you need to. And I mean, it happens so often. Like there's, for example, when you look at even personal finance, another great book that I like is Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey's cool. I love all his stuff. And I read that, and to me, especially because both these guys are no BS, I'm reading, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly how I operate. Like if your baby is ugly, I'll tell you, like, no, if your real baby is ugly, I'll probably say they're pretty. But in the realm of business ideas, stuff like that, I'm pretty straightforward. So for me, that works. And for other people, they like, it just disconnects them straight away. So if you, just because someone else got it, same as like with a mastermind group or anything else like that, just because someone else had success, that doesn't mean that you will. And that's why a lot of the time as you said, like I'm used to saying no to people and things as well. And if it's not right, I'm going to be like, like if you want to do work with me and you're the same, if you want to do work with you, we both say no to people, even though they have the money, they have the capacity, they have the opportunity. But if it's not right, there's no point in us just doing it, because it's better for them to go learn from someone else, go do something else first.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really, really do. So I want to share a story that comes into this. So this was actually my second one. So this is actually going to be a video next month as well, if you do want to check out my videos I make. So I want to tell you about how I lost $50,000 in my first year of business. And this is legit. This is absolutely legit. I wouldn't ever make a statement like that if it wasn't true. Now, before I left my job to go into my business, I actually spent a couple of years saving up on the side from work and doing work at night. Like I did the transition thing, like, side hustle, if you will. And eventually I made the jump, and really, I'll describe it. I had a laptop and a smartphone, and I was working from a spare bedroom in my unit. We were living in a small place. Like that's where I was at. And success really didn't find me quickly at all. Like I really struggled in the beginning. And what was happening really, really hardly was that Bianca was actually supporting us, and we were eating into our savings month by month. Now, I was so driven and eager, but I was also really stubborn, and I didn't want to hire mentors or coaches or join mastermind groups, because I had grown up in a way where working things out on your own actually was paid off. Like it worked. So, I didn't really have that type of learning environment. I just kind of figured stuff out, and that's who I was. But eventually, financial pressure started to mount, and I was feeling like so guilty. Like my little, my B train, like the person I'm supposed to be providing for in this world and providing for my family, just wasn't happening. So I eventually go, well, I can see all these people hiring mentors and coaches. And I did, I hired one. And you'll love this. This is where the story gets good. I went about hiring a mentor by just putting a post on Facebook. I was like, oh, hey, does anyone know anyone? Like, maybe that would be a way to go about it. And I got some replies pretty quickly, as well as actually rather too quickly, which is part of the problem. And eventually someone reached out to me who was a friend and said, look, I know someone, you should speak to them. And I did. And in speaking to that person, I arranged to have a coffee with them. And then we met at a coffee shop that wasn't too far from me a couple of days later. Now, this mentor or this person were rocked up in an insanely nice car. And I don't know, it was kind of like everyone was driving like a Holden Commodore or like a Corolla, and then this spanking BMW come in, and like by comparison, like just blew me away instantly. And I want you to imagine there was this guy, like he gets out of the car, dark sunnies, and then like a tan suit with a white shirt. It was like Miami Vice guy getting out of the car. And like the impression that had on me, because I felt so low at this time, was like, oh my God, this guy has all the answers. I found something. I cannot believe it. This has got to be like the best kept secret. That's like how I felt, like I really at the time. And of course, being desperate to make it and so driven, like I really didn't want to go back to a job, I hired this person on the spot, and they were not cheap at all. And I went all in. Like, I mean, whatever he said to do, I did. I completely did, without thinking. I was just, yep, done. And like, I'm an incredibly quick action taker and executor. And I did. Except, after a couple of months, with the cost of this coach and mentor and the advice he was providing, I started like burning cash at an alarming rate. I mean, like alarming. So I thought I had like a 12-month runway. And we managed to get that down to like a 3 to 4 month runway. So a couple of months in, I'm like starting to, I don't want to say have my doubts, but it's like people were reaching out to me going like, fuck are you doing? Like, this is not a good idea. Like the things you were doing, bad. But I wasn't ready to hear that. So like I was brushing these people off and like, you have no clue. Like, you don't know who this guy is. Like, I will do what this guy says.
You obviously don't have a BMW.
Not sure I'll be able to drive a BMW after this story. But it continued to happen. And like, eventually I realized, like, you know, we got very close to zero in the bank account. Like, I was actually stealing money from my mortgage and not telling Bianca to kind of hide my finances at the time. And just quick word to the wise: if your partner is an accountant and, you know, very well trained in finances, you don't get away with this shit. Like, she was all over me, but I think she was trying not to embarrass me. In all honesty, she was trying to give me a chance, and I'll be forever grateful for it. But eventually, I had to end things because, like, I ran out of money, and I was like, I can't work this out. And like, the night I ended the relationship with this coach or mentor, I didn't sleep at all. Like, I was in bed and, like, I felt like such a failure. I had felt like I just destroyed any future for my family. Like, I wasn't going to be able to business owner. I was ready to get a job the next day. And I was sitting there, and then, like, I had this light bulb moment. I had this moment where I was kind of like, you know, listening to Tony Robbins in bed while Bianca couldn't sleep. And one of the things that kept popping up, and like what the light bulb that went off, is like, I didn't do a very good job at checking if this person, this coach or mentor, was qualified to give me advice. And I got up and I got on the internet and I went through all the information and things they had. And I realized that it was very, very clear this person had never had success in what I was trying to achieve. Like, they'd never actually made money on the internet like I was planning to make money at the time. And not only that, like, the things this person were teaching were like clearly for another industry and were outdated. So I realized, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, fuck. And I look back and I laugh now, but it's like, in that, I've learned very, very quickly that, you know, you've got to be very, very careful who you listen to. You got to be very careful who you take advice from, because, you know, you don't listen to the broke financial planner. You don't take on board the fat personal trainer. Like, you've got to take advice from people that have actually done the thing you're trying to do. And like, that's a huge shortcut, like a huge, huge shortcut. So when I look back on it now, I kind of think of that story and go, that was a $50,000 lesson on how to filter for the right advice. And when you learn an expensive lesson like that, the more expensive it is, the more you tend to learn it. And it's something that I've carried over. And it's like, well, I'll put it out there. That mistake, you know, cost me 50 grand, but I reckon it's probably made me 10x that in learning that lesson over the next few years, and probably more even by now. So taking advice from the right people, Kim, such an important one.
Oh man, it's as you say, it's so important. But as well, like, to be honest, it probably was, you got off cheap. Some people might spend up to 100 grand and have that lesson. So, you know, as you said, like, it really does provide you with 10, if not even probably 20 times that afterwards. Because now it's like, you know what parameters to look for, questions to ask when you're like, if you want something, if you're looking for specific mentorship, it's like, well, you know that now they have to have the experience in doing it. Otherwise, there's no point in having the conversation. Like, that may be good for someone else, but if it doesn't fit what you want to do, then there's no point.
Absolutely. And I even think back to it, because there's another lesson in here, and it's like, you know, good at one thing doesn't mean good at all things. And I think this, like, mentor or coach, because I often thought, I'm like, if he couldn't help me, why didn't he just can it? Like, you know, because one of the things I'm really big on is, if I can't help someone, like, oh, I won't take their money. I can't do it. I won't sleep at night. And I go, why aren't people all like that? And when I look back on this, I think this person was so confident in their ability in other industries, they just thought that they were going to be great in this industry as well. And that's clearly not the case.
Clearly not the case, no. It, yes, I know what you mean. It's very, very funny and interesting how that can all happen. But yeah, I think most people in business have had some sort of experience like that, I feel. Because, yeah.
Yeah, please tell me I'm not the only one.
Yeah, not everyone in business, I think, is as forthcoming, as you said, like, forthcoming. And who may be delusion, or maybe just that they just don't know, but not everyone is able to get you can't be all things to all people.
Absolutely. So we'll kick on to the next one now, Kim. Have you got another one you want to share with us? Have you got any other stories or lessons that you feel from your 20s are the big dominoes? Hopefully that's come through. Kim, can you still hear me? I'm definitely still recording, dude. This is going to be funny on the podcast episode.
Oh. Hello?
Hey, man. Are we back on?
Yeah, it's coming through a little bit choppy now, but I got you now.
Oh, well, we'll just we'll let it roll. I'll tell you what, we're not even going to end this bit out. I was just saying, what's the next lesson you would like to pass on, or story you feel could be shared here?
good one. It's all about communication and not dropping. No, it's not. So my the next one is for me is all about we just talked about in general, like at a high level, relationships, right? But the right type of relationships, like it's something that I inherently have done and do, but not purposefully. And I think that that's something that towards the latter part of my 20s is a big area that I've focused on, is doing that. And I think that some people in business, and Charlie, you're similar to me. It's like I'm not the extrovert person. Like when I go into a room, I'm not going to be the person who's walking around talking to every single person. I'm the dude chilling, checking his phone, wondering when he can go home and watch a movie or something like that, right? That's kind of like the realm of what I'm playing. But I think probably after a couple of years, like I realized that I had to kind of shift that. And most of the time, it's like when I find the people that and even with it, when I am, it's the people that I'm comfortable with, like it's still like I need my recharge time, which is just me chilling, or me and my partner, to be able to recharge the batteries. So it's something that I heavily have done. And it's like normally when I go to an event or something like that now, it's like I really have a focus on finding like 1 to 2, maybe 3 key relationships, depending on how long it is. And just spending a lot of time with those people. Like I don't try and give a business card to every single person. I try and build a direct, like an actual relationship with one person.
I love going to an event and watching the guy that tries to give a business card to everyone or girl.
Yeah, and they try and run around, and it's like cool. It's like I'm happy to stand there by myself, have a drink, look around, and someone comes and has a chat. I'll actually have a direct chat and care about what they have to say, connect with them, and then if they move on, that's cool. But it's like I'm not there trying to chase and meet tons of people. So, but being deliberate and reinforcing relationships, I think is really something that I've had to have a big focus on, because previously I had been trying to be that person and no one really cares or knows. And for me, like what always seems to, it just kind of seems to happen. But a lot of the time I'll connect with a person that is one of the biggest and similar to the people trying to go out everywhere. And because I build a good relationship with them, they kind of tell everyone about me anyway. Like, I just spoke to this guy, Kim, and he does that. You're talking blah, blah, blah. Like, it kind of just happens, which is funny, because then I just like send them out to do it for me kind of thing. But really focusing on, once those relationships are built, like doubling down, emailing that person, connecting more with that person, trying to provide them with value and having no expectation of anything else. Because I think a lot of times when people go to, whether it's any form of event, like they're there for an outcome. A lot of the time, it's probably maybe a business. If it's a business type event, different if it's personal growth or development. But a business type event, you're looking for business contacts, business improvement, business development. Like you want to get more sales and more people around you, or solve a problem that you have. So, but for me, normally it's like if I'm going there, like I take away the expectation of doing that and go, I'm gonna have an awesome connection. I'm gonna find someone that either I can help them, or maybe down the track they'll help me. And I always kind of lead with that first. And I probably still shoot myself in the foot by giving out advice that, like when someone tells me their business problem, I just give them what the solution is that I see. Which sometimes people probably they don't take it in full. What's the right word I'm looking for? Like take the advice as if they'd pay 10 grand for it. Which is kind of the level. Like if someone asks me for a piece of advice, I don't pull. Charlie's got.
Would you know what? I'm actually laughing because I've actually got into the habit of taking your advice more seriously. Like even before this call, you gave me an idea, and I was like, "That's a legitimate 10 grand idea."
Yeah, and just because like I don't. It's not like I go, "Ooh, I'm going to give someone a breadcrumb, and hopefully they come and ask me for more." I'm just like, look, if you had just given me 100 grand, I'm going to give you the answer. Like if you ask me, like I try and be pretty transparent. And if I try and add value to a problem, it's legitimately because I think I can somehow help them solve the problem. So it's like, it's probably good and bad. Like there's people like Charlie that know how I kind of roll, and they'll be like, okay, that's like legitimate, and I'll take that. And some people, they're just like, oh yeah, thank you. And they go along and they don't take it on board. So I probably still suck at that from my 20s, but yeah.
I'm not sure how we changed that one in your 30s though, but there's a few things there. I want to recap a couple of them. Number one, I completely agree. It's like fewer relationships, but better relationships. Double down on the people that I think are important to you, or that you really value and want. I think it's even more to like you want to be in your life, whether it's business or personal. Might not even be directly correlated to value, because I've got people I want in my life, but they're certainly not the best financial performers, but they make my life fun and enjoyable. So it makes a huge difference. But the second part, what you just referenced there is, the old saying of, people who pay attention. And some people are, the best example of this is YouTube. Like literally, there is everything on YouTube. But because it's free, it's like it doesn't get the value assigned to it. And I think like when we're at events little Kim sprinkling his magic sauce on, you drop some bombs sometime, man. Like I'll never forget when we were in Bali and like you pretty much redesigned someone's business. And it was a killer model, but I don't think they ever put it in place. I don't think they ever took it up. And I'm like, that was a 10 grander. I'd say more, that was 100 grander dropped and wasted.
Yeah. And but that's, I think like by doing that, it probably reinforces my other point of building relationships, because people, the right people see that I like actually care and legitimately are trying to help someone versus anything. And then I find that always gives me like, it comes back tenfold, law of reciprocity or whatever you want to call it, karma, whatever. But when I do that and I help, like I lead with like helping someone first, somehow it always comes back. Like we've had on the podcast before stories of like when I met like Brian and Rhonda in Bali and all these, like a lot of relationships that I've built over time is always led with like the value first. And like, I just have no expectation of getting it in return. And if it does come, great. If it doesn't, that's cool as well.
What a great attitude. I think when you don't have the expectations, it takes the pressure off as well, which makes a huge difference. But I'm just like, I had to laugh a little bit because like I remember like, being to those events where it's like, the person who's doing an MLM that's trying to give everyone a business card, or like the people that go to these events only to do joint ventures and pretty much just want to take from everyone as quick as possible. And I've never seen it pulled off well. It doesn't, in my opinion, that type of behavior doesn't work. People see through it. But that's a great lesson, Kim. I really, really like that one.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm ready and excited. Like I've been on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Ooh.
Let's hear the third.
All right. So, we're talking about the biggest lessons in my 20s. And undoubtedly, this is the one that hit home the most for me from here, is that I think, and I'm actually hopeful that this pisses some people off enough to take some action. That's where it's going to come from. And it's like the biggest lesson in my 20s was realizing that I was self-employed. So when I look back to my business career, is like I identified as a business owner, I had a PTY LTD, had a little frame up of my business name and all that.
Certificate.
Yeah, my little certificate. But the reality is that my business was completely tied to me. It was not a separate entity at all. Like every piece of information and every account and every bit of work I was doing was like a self-employed person. And if I could pass on one thing to all the aspiring business owners out there, or people that want to be business owners, it's the concept of that you're only a business owner when you can completely separate yourself from your business. So it's like, for me in my life now, is like I can go on holiday for 3 months and Outsourcing Angel will be fine, probably better off, I dare say. And that's happened before. But that's a completely different game to running a business where everything's around you. And I really look back on that and go, I don't think enough business owners are paying attention to that. And I think it's a really big reason why people don't go the distance, because they just burn out and then they're done.
It's so true. I remember, I think it was Robert Kiyosaki's book. I think it's Cash Flow Quadrant. I think that is the one.
That's where it came from.
Yeah. And I remember, because when I was like, I didn't take the advice myself, but my dad was giving me like those like Rich Dad Poor Dad stuff. I think it was like 10 or 11. He just left his job at the Reserve Bank, started his own business, and he was telling me he's a business owner. And I was like, Dad, I think that that's wrong. And he's like, Kid, you're 11 years old. Like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I was like, well, I read the book that you gave me, and Robert Kiyosaki says that you don't have a business. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, Robert Kiyosaki says you have a job. And he just literally like grabs the book off me and just walks away. Like, because it's like, imagine like hearing that, you're like, you're like, you don't have a business, you have a job. You're like, oh, right in the feels from your 10-year-old.
It hurts. First off, I'm impressed you had the chops to say that to your old man. Like, go kid.
I was just reading the book. I was like, it wasn't me. I didn't say it, Dad. Robert Kiyosaki said it.
It's one of those identity things. Like, I'll literally never forget where I was. Like, I was laying in bed. I was sitting up. It was like 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And I had my legs on the bed, crossed, and kind of my back on the wall. And I was flipping through that book. And it was like someone poked a knife in and twisted it. Like, I actually was enraged because once I realized what had gone on here, but I guess these are the pivotal moments, and this is the power of reading books and information and everything that comes with it. But that book absolutely changed my world.
Yeah, it's so good. And I think that's a good one to really finish on as well, because if you are someone who has a business, like if you don't have the right things in place for you to go out of there, it's like, if we're probably, I would say, lucky to like both have somewhat that learning in our 20s, because some people probably don't get that till their 50s. And then
Definitely.
they're like, oh, damn, like I want to sell my business, close it, or move on and become a great nomad, travel around Australia. And that's not going to be possible because I'm the cog that keeps things turning, and I'm the number one employee.
Yeah, well, I just want to preface this. There's nothing wrong with being self-employed or working in a corporate or being a tradie or having a job or working part-time or not working at all. I don't mind. But where the danger is if you think you're a business owner and you are self-employed and you're gearing yourself up to live a lifestyle where you can take immense time off and be a nomad and semi-retire and all this stuff, it's not really going to happen in self-employed world.
I think that we need to do an episode, Charlie, on the nomenclature in business and identifying like what actually is a business, like what is the category of the self-employed, the business owner, the operator, the entrepreneur. Like these words get thrown around so much. And if I can share one last story, don't ever target people with the title entrepreneur on LinkedIn if you actually want entrepreneurs, because you're going to get a hell of a lot of network marketers pitch you on their products, right? This nomenclature, I think, is like we need to fix that. We've got to do an episode and promote the shit out of it so that people use the terms appropriately for what they are.
Can I tell you, it's really interesting, right? So what happens, I've got to tell you a story really quick. This episode's just not going to end. But you know what? It's our show, so we can do what we want. What happens a lot in culture, okay, is, and I watched this doco and it was amazing on names, on what people name their kids. Now, what happens through the generations is names become popular and then they decline. Like you would have seen it like in our generation, like the name Mary isn't very common, but that would have been common a while back. So the theory is that the wealthier kids are named certain names, and then the poorer classes and lower socioeconomics then use those names and they filter down through the cycles. And that's how it actually moves through. Fascinating documentary. But the point is this also happens with business terms and words we use. Like, once upon a time, like, authentic leader was a great term, and then it becomes tainted by marketers and then no one wants to use it. And there's a ton of them. Coach. Like even marketer's a dirty word now. Like I'd rather tell my parents I was a drug dealer than a marketer. So it's like, it's really interesting cycle where like, entrepreneur used to really stand for this identity of, a certain type of business owner. And then as it's adopted by, let's say, network marketers, then the entrepreneurs shift to other words. They start going, maybe I'm a business owner, or the self-employed don't want that. And then they start calling themselves, and it just all ends up this hot mess. So I'm all for it. We need to like set the entrepreneur dictionary in order.
There we go. That's the name of the episode as well. The Entrepreneur's Dictionary for network marketers, right?
Absolutely. I do. Well, we're going to wrap this one up from here. This has been a great episode. I feel lighter for getting it all off my chest and sharing and reminiscing. It was a heap of fun. So thank you for joining me, Kim. That has been Confessions of a Business Owner. Thank you so much. New episode coming soon.